spent a good chunk of my life teaching classes of about 30 people or less. So the 200-ish or so in here, plus the however many are watching on the streaming. That's different. Done it before, but not recently. So we'll see if we can keep it the same level of informal that I like to in my normal talks, classes, etc. That basically means yell out questions, but I'm going to have to obviously tamp them down at some point. Otherwise, we'll never get past the first screen, assuming you guys are actually talkative, right? So, all right. Well, thanks for coming. This is the title of the session. Hopefully, you're in the right place. I'm Rob. How you doing, everybody? Hey. All right. So let's start here. I want to throw down the gauntlet a bit. We've been hearing a lot about visualizations past couple of days, right? Also, custom visualizations. I'm going to show you the coolest, the sexiest custom visualization that you'll see in the entire 2 days, okay? Big promise, right? And we built this several years ago. It's almost 3 years ago now, at least 2 years ago. You're like, wait, what's this custom visual thing, Rob? The custom visual framework in Power BI is a recent thing, okay? But we built this custom visual to impress the president of a publicly traded company and get him to green light further investment in our project that we were doing with a client. Okay, it up until this point had been like a little bit of an experiment to see what we could get done, but now we were going to try to take it to production and actually get it adopted as the guiding light for this organization. But we had to face down this presidential review. Okay? And this is what the president of this company said after seeing this custom visual that we had built, right? This dashboard. Right? That's a pretty strong endorsement, right? We were hoping for, keep going, or, good work, want to see more, or whatever. I want you to press the gas pedal as hard as you can. Is about as strong of an endorsement as we would never have dared hope for that level. And ready, here you go, brace yourselves, sexist visualization of MDIS 2016. Ready? There it is. Okay? Right? Yes, a huge field of numbers. Okay? Color-coded, of course. Now, all of these numbers are fake. Okay, I'm not showing you anything that you shouldn't be seeing. I've also redacted the names of some of the metrics themselves, because even some of the metrics are a little bit proprietary, to this company. But other than that, you're seeing absolutely 100% this is a screenshot taken straight out of Excel with the fake numbers in it. Okay. Typically when you talk about visualizations, you talk about selling people, it's always some fancy animation or something like that. And there's a lot of truth to that. Like, you really do need, oftentimes, to get people excited. Come on, like, you're either a data person or you're not, right? And most people here, I would assume, are data people, but everyone you left behind at your companies, not data people. Don't care, not interested, right? But pretty chart, right? But when it's a little bit different, though, when a company already has a huge problem, knows it has a huge problem, or flip it around, a huge opportunity that they've been, unable to address for a long time, and then someone comes along and shows them a field of numbers, okay, like this, that are their numbers. And it's like they've seen, Bigfoot or something, like, whoa, we've sung songs and legends of this dashboard, but we never thought we'd see it, and here it is. It's different when it's theirs. It's different when it's theirs. Right? And so, imagine showing someone a chart or a really, awesome custom visualization, the president of a publicly traded company, and having them say, ooh, press the gas pedal as hard as you can. This got a visceral reaction. And let that sink in. Okay? Having the numbers that you've never had before is a really big deal, almost no matter how you present them. Don't mail it in and do a really crappy job of presenting your awesome stuff. But having the numbers is a really big deal. That's sort of the first theme that I want to drive home for you folks. Okay? And obviously, this is a grid. This is an Excel grid, right? Okay? This is the type of thing that we see in Excel, certainly from time to time. It's nicely formatted. There aren't many tools in the world that can build this shape of dashboard. Most even dedicated business intelligence tools can't do this kind of shape and do a very good job of it. But anyway, it's also become a lot easier to build these things in Excel more recently than before, which of course is why we're here. Okay? All right, let's do a quiz. What's the world's most popular programming language? Java. Yeah. Java and Python, certainly not C and C++ anymore, right? They're lagging. All right, let's look at the stats here. So I've looked these up. It's always an estimate, but back of the envelope estimate is good enough for these purposes. Worldwide, 9 to 10. Imagine 9 to 10 million Java. Imagine their convention if they got together. VBA. Someone after my own heart. But I'm going to one-up you and say that none of the above is the answer. The answer is actually Excel itself, okay? Right? And it's not VBA even, okay? It's not VBA. I'm talking about Excel formulas, Excel charts, Excel pivot tables. That is a programming language. In fact, it's a development environment hiding in the Office suite, okay? It is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It is nothing like Word, okay? Nothing at all. Unfortunately, right? Unfortunately, it is largely perceived as Word with a grid, okay? But it's not, right? Apologies if anyone from Microsoft Word is here, right? Word is a great app. It's a great app. It's just not Excel, right? And so, and in the slide template for this conference, they gave us this really, really nice. Oh, the clicker. Come on, clicker. There we go. They gave us this nice slide for showing code. Isn't this a nice template for showing code? It seemed kind of a shame to waste it, right? So let's use it, okay? So the top section here is a fragment of Java that I grabbed off the internet like this morning. And the bottom is an Excel formula that I grabbed off the internet this morning. Now, of course, you don't typically see Excel formulas formatted with these new lines and their nested parentheses and things like that. That would make them too easy to understand, right? So we do it like this instead. We cram it into one line, and like heaven help you, like you're not going to figure that out. Like, not only is it the world's most popular programming language, but it's actually really hard. Like the people who do it and get good at it really underestimate what they've become. I mean, they have become monsters, Like, the variables aren't even named things that you can understand, C15, what is C15? Don't remember, right? Compared to regular programming languages, the Excel person, the programmer next door or in the cubicle next door or living across the street, they're really everywhere. Some of you in here, I'm sure, right? They're actually programming in one of the most sophisticated, complete, and actually difficult, in fairness to them, programming languages on the planet. There's even, very academic textbooks written about this whole field called functional programming. Okay? It's function-oriented programming languages. Spreadsheets aren't the only example of it, but they're certainly the most popular. It's sort of like bonus points. If you can work a Simon Peyton Jones reference into a presentation, it's like spreadsheet Yahtzee. Okay. So my former colleagues, you're up. You're next. You have to do tag. You're it. All right. So, why? Click. There we go. Why so popular? Not why so serious. Why so popular? Well, I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of the talk I'm giving after this. So, if you're coming to the next talk, you're going to get just the tiniest taste of it. But, imagine you're a business person. You're on the business side of the house. you've got businessy problems, you've got business nuance and rules and issues in your head. It's taken you years to get to the point of knowing everything you know about the business. And you have a need to turn data into information. Well, you can go to a specialist, someone who knows like the real BI tools, or real sophisticated programming tools, whatever. The point is, a real pro, okay? And they know their stuff, they really do. The problem is that it takes, on average, for a BI project, 17 months to complete the thing, because the communication involved and the iteration involved just eats your time, just kills you. Now, that's for a brand new, from-scratch project. But if even as simple as adding a single column to a single existing report, there are industry metrics on how many business days it takes people to do that, okay? Business days, one column, one report, it hovers between like 6 and 7 business days, okay? Which, what we think of and should think of as a single click on a checkbox, okay? That's what it should really be, folks, is a click on a checkbox, 6 or 7 business days, okay? So if you don't like the 17-month stat, you can take 6 or 7 business days and apply it to a single column on a single existing report, okay? There's a really fancy technical term for this. It's called slow, okay? Really slow. So, sometimes you do that, but most of the time you don't. Instead, I got Excel, I know Excel, or at least, even if I don't, the person sitting next to me does. Usually about 1 out of 16 people in an office has become like VLOOKUP and pivot table savvy. And those people, well, when they execute, because they have all the requirements and all the business knowledge in their brains and the tool set, Excel, to execute, well, they don't need to really talk to anyone. They can just, communicate with themselves, essentially. And, despite all the obvious jokes about, how poorly that can go, you actually communicate with yourself incredibly efficiently compared to how you communicate with other humans, especially other humans who come from a completely different background, completely different skill set. So rather than, 17 months, okay, very frequently it's just a few hours or less to get the same result. Maybe minutes, in extreme cases, maybe a day or so. Certainly not 17 months, certainly not 2 weeks, okay? So in that light, for a moment, it almost doesn't matter what capabilities Excel has, and I'm an Excel fan, big-time Excel fan, but it almost doesn't matter what capabilities the tool has. It's beside the point. Excel's huge, devastating advantage over every other data tool in the world is that, A, it can really do anything because it is an open sort of like programming environment. It's not a tool. It's disguised as a tool, okay? But it's a programming language, which means it's incredibly flexible. It can do anything. That's number one. And number two, the business can learn it. The business can learn it. Okay? That's it. That's why it's so popular. And that's why we have things like export to Excel, the third most common button in all data applications on the planet behind OK and cancel. Right? Now, I know this is my best joke ever, because it's the one that's stolen the most. Right? I am now finding plagiarism of my joke on the internet, and I'm halfway thrilled and halfway bitter. But it's the truth, right? Like, take export to Excel out of your software and watch how quickly your software syncs. Okay, so I said it almost doesn't matter what capabilities Excel has. That ability to short-circuit the incredibly long communication cycles, can't stress it enough. It's a devastating advantage over any other tool set. And it's not really about the software at that point. It's about the people, which shouldn't really surprise us, right? Because the people are, we shouldn't forget, the people are a lot more important than the software, right? We often get that backwards. But in recent years, since like 2010, the capabilities of Excel have been getting massively upgraded. Massively upgraded. The message about this is not getting out really at all. Right? Every class I teach, there's a refrain that happens. At least one person in the class at about the 2-hour mark sits back and goes, why haven't I been told about this? They're almost angry, you know? I'm like, well, you know, word's not getting out. We're working on that. I'm not really, well, I guess I am partly working on that, but I think Microsoft is starting to get it straight that this message does need to get out. Because this is an amazing tool set. These capabilities, these summary here, and I won't go into these in great depth. Don't have time. But these 6 capabilities are the sorts of things that had been reserved, like hoarded selfishly by other data tools like BI tools. Okay? And we've been bringing them. I keep using that word we because, you know, I was Microsoft for 14 years. But for the past 6 years, I've been on my own, been out for my own company. It is hard to break the we habit. Sorry. But yeah, these 6 classes of capabilities in the form of things like Power Pivot, Power Query, the Excel server, the various flavors and iterations of the Excel server, the Power Pivot server, and now Power BI, which is really the same thing. These are the things that have been changing. And if Excel already had a tremendous advantage before, imagine what it's like when we, finally give it the capabilities that the other tools had and maintain that learnable by the business thing. Okay? Absolutely on the, we're standing on the edge of a completely new world, and it's like the world has no idea what's about to happen. It's crazy what's about to happen. Okay, so, so what? Let's talk about money, right? We like money. Usually when I say let's talk about money, people laugh, but, you never know what the audience is like. You guys are serious. You just know that money is the thing, right? All right, so imagine if you were the company or the individual who back in the early 1980s was first to adopt spreadsheets, okay? I think that level of advantage, of competitive advantage as an individual in your career or as a company versus other companies, that level of competitive advantage is now available again. Let that sink in. As big of an advantage as the invention of spreadsheets itself is what we're looking at. Not exaggerating at all. And let me give you a few examples of this. These are things that we've done with our company. A project going on at a huge company, one that you all have heard of. They'd spend 18 months grinding away at this, 4 different failed attempts with 4 different consulting firms, 6 figures of money down the drain, nothing to show for it. And then in 1 week, 2 of them and 1 of us, 1 week we were done, right? Start to finish. Okay? We went back a week, and did 1 more week a little bit later to polish it up, to take some of the rough edges off. Okay? Like, that's real, that happened, and I wish I could tell you specifically what it was, but I can't. Here's another one. A large retailer was considering, they'd done some construction on some of their stores to change what those stores sell, thinking it would raise, the bottom line. But they got nervous about halfway through this process of converting one store, every month or so over time. They thought, maybe it's actually undermining. Maybe it's undermining our bottom line. Can you believe it? Like, they don't really know, but they think it might be undermining it. 4 hours of work, we very conclusively proved that that this conversion that they were doing was adding $5 million a year to the bottom line, certainly not subtracting anything. And it was going to cost them $3 million to go and deconvert the stores they'd already converted. And just 4 hours work, Not bad for 4 hours, I suppose. Right? What was it? $8 million. We'll just take the first year. Right? $2 million an hour. Right? It's pretty good. It's pretty good ROI. We won't consider the long-term value of this series. Found $14 million like hiding under a rock at one client. Right? Just found it. Right? $14 million in discounts that they'd given their customers in the previous year in a category where customers don't care or notice discounts. Right? So next year they just go keep that money. Right? This is where people typically say, Rob, do you guys work on a percentage of money found? We're like, no, not that brave yet. But we're getting there. 3 people part-time for a month. Everyone had a different, had other jobs going on at this other company. Made the stock price go up. This was the press the gas pedal as hard as you can project. For obvious reason, right? It makes sense now. This isn't just something we do for academic reasons or techie reasons. Like, it actually moves the needle. And all this talk that you very often hear about, oh, this stuff isn't enterprise BI. Like, I don't know what enterprise BI means other than, like, impacts the entire enterprise, right? So yeah, it can be team, it can be all that kind of stuff, but it can absolutely, in a couple of these companies, we're talking huge, huge, huge companies with tremendous volumes of data. Here's another one, the last one. 1 week, 2 people, $25 million a year in savings every year. This is a workbook, folks. Okay? This is an Excel workbook. All right? Now, super, super robust, industrial strength, new, modern workbook running on a server, but it's a workbook generating $25 million a year on the bottom line every year, year over year. Been running for a couple of years now. Okay. So anyway, that's why this stuff matters. This is just a sampling of some of the things that we've done, that we've seen. I'm sure there's other things like this going on elsewhere as well. We don't see it all. Okay. Click. Okay, so this session promised demos. Okay? Dangerous. Because you never really know, in my shoes, what pace to go through demos at. There's 2 different things you can get from a demo. One, you can get a picture of what's possible. Like, wow, I didn't know that we could do that with this technology. It inspires thinking and ideas, and you can then go and look later and figure out how that was done. And that's a very valuable thing to convey to you. The other one is like the nitty-gritty of how it's actually done. And again, depending upon the audience, that can be really valuable as well. So to help me tune, I'm going to ask you, by show of hands here in the room, the live studio audience, as it will, how many of you, within the last 2 weeks, have written a VLOOKUP? About half, a little bit more than half. All right. Let me ask one follow-up question. How many of you have written a Power Pivot or Power BI DAX formula in the past 2 weeks? Wow, it's like the same hands. Why are you still using VLOOKUP? It doesn't make sense. It's one of the things I tell my classes. You are no longer allowed to use VLOOKUP. There's some work to be done here. I didn't even plan that, actually. I had no idea we were going to get the same hands, or the same number anyway. All right, so that's good for me. That'll help me out here. And we're going to see how the demos go. Okay. Got a big folder full of demos here. Let's get started. So I'm just going to be using, for the vast majority of our time left together here, I'm going to be using Excel 2013 Power Pivot, because that's what we are running in production most days. I also have Excel 2010 on this laptop, because you never know what people are running. And sooner or later, I'm going to replace 2013 with 2016. Beautiful thing is, once you learn how to use this stuff, it's really the same thing in all versions of Excel. And it's the same thing when you switch to Power BI Desktop. This is a really uncommon thing for the Microsoft ecosystem, to have so many products agreeing with one another, right? Rather than arm wrestling. I'm like, what happened to the Microsoft I used to work at? But anyway, so here are some tables of data. I'm sure you've all seen AdventureWorks before, and all of its various flavors, and hey, you're going to see it again. You got to love seeing demos of the latest and greatest technology with dates in it that are like 1999, 2000, 2001. Right? But hey, it's a great data set, for giving demos. So given that there's still two different kinds of people in the room. People who use Excel pretty heavily and people who are living amongst people who use Excel pretty heavily. There's really no third kind of person in the world. Okay? I'm going to try to split the difference. Okay? I'm going to keep it relatively light. Just tell you, like, hey, these are problems that Excel people deal with all the time. And now in the new world, they're a hell of a lot better. Okay? Seem like a reasonable approach? All right. Yeah, this is not the feedback I was, There we go. That's better. That's better. Thank you. It's hard to talk at an audience for a long time without hearing anything. So help me out a little. Okay, so hey, here's a table of data. It's a table of sales data. It's got like 60,000 rows in it. The world of data never cooperates and shows up, or at least it rarely cooperates and shows up on your doorstep already in one nice formed table that's really stretches horizon to horizon. That's not how it happens. For lots of good reasons, the data shows up in different tables. There are advantages even to keeping it in different tables, but certainly different sources need to come together and tell you, sort of play a symphony together a lot of times. And the Excel person is the one left stitching all of that together. So we got a table of sales and a table that's a list of all of our customers and list of all of the days and products and all that kind of stuff. And we also have, in addition to the sales table, we have a table of data of phone calls, people who've called in to complain or ask for support about some of the products that we sold them. And this is a particularly difficult problem. Even if you're a VLOOKUP person, taking this service calls table and stitching it together with your sales table, this is something that you would wish on your worst enemies. Okay, it's a lot of elbow grease to do this in Excel pre-2010. Okay, but with Power Pivot, what I call modern Excel, this thing I keep trying to get ground. It's a term that I really wish could catch on. If you guys could all go back and just start talking about modern Excel, meaning this, Excel plus these new technologies, help it gain some traction, I'd really appreciate it. Because we can't just call it Excel. It's like the next leap up in spreadsheets, the next leap up in data. Got to do better than just calling it Excel. Anyway, so this would be really hard. For the Excel crowd in here, you'd be potentially building a couple of different pivot tables and then using formulas to reach into those pivot tables and stitch together some answer on a third sheet. Or maybe you're an array formula guru, or you really like sum if and all that kind of stuff. But all of those approaches have two things in common. One of them is it's going to take you a while to get it ready. It's going to, you're going to be at it for, if you're really fast, maybe 20 minutes. On average, longer than that. But then the second thing that they all have in common is that as soon as you need to do something slightly different, you're basically starting over. Okay? That's old Excel. And you're always starting over, aren't you? Right? Yeah? No? Because what happens? People ask for something, you deliver exactly what they asked for, and they go, oh yeah, perfect, this is exactly what we need. Could we also see it broken out by region? Right? And you're like, no. You can't. Right? Anyway, in the new world, you can. So let me just show you very briefly, hey, we got this cool thing called diagram view in the Power Pivot window. We load all of our data into Power Pivot instead, and rather than write VLOOKUPs or sum ifs or multiple pivot tables or any of that, we just do this. We just do some quick drag drop. Okay, that wasn't so hard, right? If I remember what I'm doing anyway. All right, so a couple of quick relationships and then products. Hey, we'll just wire these up, right? And the last one is customer. All right, so what I just did there took the place of close to 200 VLOOKUPs and then some. right? Because now we can do something that we could never do even with VLOOKUP. So if we go back, actually, let's do that. Create a pivot table in Excel. We see all of the different tables in here. And yes, I've written some formulas ahead of time just to make things go a little faster. Yeah, we want to look at products, right? We want to look at, let's say, subcategories of products. See what those look like. Okay, and then we want to see sales, total sales dollars, okay, that of each one of those. I haven't formatted it yet, but I can do that. And we can see total call minutes in the same pivot table. Okay? Like what I just did right there with those quick drag drops and those 2 clicks, okay, honestly, that was at least 20 minutes of work in regular Excel, probably a couple of hours. And it would have been a lot faster if I hadn't been talking while I was doing it. Okay? And these formulas are nothing special. They're just simple sums. So I'm not doing anything magic in these formulas either. This pivot table is impossible. It's just impossible. You can't do this in a pivot table until now, until these tools. So then someone comes along and says, we really need to see it broken out by customer segment. You're like, well, how about, we can do that. You want to see it by, different types of, let's say gender, right? Female and male, right? That was 1 click. I always tell my students that when someone moves the goalposts on you and change the requirements at the last minute, like they always do, you enforce a 30-minute waiting period on giving the follow-up answer, because 30 minutes is really fast, But you got to maintain some mystery. You don't want them to start, cheapening what you do now, right? You've earned this checkbox. That 1 click, you've earned it, right? My people. You live this, don't you? Right? Like, this is your chance to not have it end up like it was before. Right? Don't blow it. All right. So you can do any of those sorts of things, but you can also do really cool stuff like, hey, let's add a formula to this, a measure, and we'll do something where we say, hey, total cost of support. If we know, for instance, that each minute we're on the phone with our customers costs us 75 cents or $1.50, we can just multiply total call minutes times $1.50 and get this blended metric, okay, how much it's actually costing us to support those products for those genders of customers. And then you're like, wow, well, let's take it one step further and go, it's not the same if a product we sell very little of, a small dollar amount is still a problem if we're not selling much of that product. And if it's a really high volume product, we can probably tolerate a bit more support cost on that, right? So support as percent of sales, a nice little ratio here. We'll use this awesome divide function, which all it does is protect us from division by 0. Everyone use divide yet? Yeah? It's awesome, huh? Yeah. It's like the little things make these huge differences. Total cost of support, I'll resize this, divided by total sales. We'll make that a percentage. Okay. And we can take the original metrics off of here. We don't need to see the intermediates. We can just see this. We can, to have some fun with it, we can do some color. So the higher numbers are worse for this metric. And we can put gender over on columns. People want to see it laid out differently. And let's sort largest to smallest. Yeah, and socks are killing us. Left versus right, I guess, And, men are doing a little worse with socks than women, but women got nothing to brag about. That was just a handful of clicks, folks, and this is one of the most common problems that analysts and basically everyone that uses Excel every day has to deal with the budget versus actuals, plan and forecast versus what's actually happened is another example of this. There are some models I've helped clients with where we have 9 different data tables. I'm not talking about like reference and lookup tables like lists of customers. I mean like 9 different tables that are contributing metrics to produce one all-up view of the business. And it's just simple as that, Take us another, 5 minutes at most to create those relationships. Okay? This multi-data table thing and the ability to write formulas that adapt every time you twist and turn and filter the report couldn't be any more game-changing than what they are. I told you I'd have to tamp it down, but so far we've had nothing. So anyone have a question or a reaction? One thing. First hand that I see. Okay. How do you get your measures to appear in a metrics group? Very good question. What you do is you just grab some random data, okay, but just type metrics, for instance, or metrics 2, right? And I'll put a number in there just because I like to. I'm going to copy that, just copy it, go into the Power Pivot window, and paste it as a new table, call it metrics 2, okay? And I know I messed something. No, I didn't actually. Metrics 2, okay? And then when we go look at it, the important thing to do is you hide all of the columns in that table, okay? Not the table. You want to leave the table not hidden. But if you hide all of the columns from Client Tools and then put a measure down here, we'll just say, my measure, and it will be, we'll use the random function because, hey, that's a fun measure, right? When you go back to Excel and go to the pivot table, the field list, okay, if all that's attached to the table is measures, you'll get this nice little sigma, and you'll only have measures underneath there, which is what you want. As soon as you have one column in there that's not hidden, okay, so this is what you call a dirty trick, right? Like this is, right? Yeah, but Excel is the world of dirty tricks, right? Like we're the most inventive crew the world has ever known, Without Excel and without us, the lights wouldn't come on, folks, So I love the craftiness and the inventiveness of the Excel crowd. I'm here to stay. Okay? Thank you. Great question. All right, so there's our first one. I might come back to this. As always, this will be the first time that I've given most of these demos. So I should have started this before I asked for a question. This would have been a really good. Okay, so Excel. One of the things on there was on the list of 6 things that have been added to Excel is virtually unlimited data capacity. Right? And so Excel caps out at 1 million rows per sheet. But it can become slow before that, right? Especially if you're deploying a lot of VLOOKUPs. Even 30,000, 60,000 rows can really, cramp your style if you're using a lot of VLOOKUP. Now I apologize that I don't have Zoom It installed on this computer, but maybe you can see down here at the bottom, we're looking at a table with 162 million rows of data in it. Can you see that? I'll duck. If you can't see it, take my word for it. 162 million rows. That's why it took a minute for it to load off the disk. And this other table next to it has another 141 million rows. I'm carrying around 300 million rows of data in a workbook in this little laptop, which I don't particularly like. Okay? It's not some supercomputer of a laptop. And I've been running this demo for years. This is like the 3rd or 4th laptop in a row that I've used for this demo. The old one was really nothing special. And back over here in Excel, I have, we'll turn on the headings just really quick here so you can see. This pivot table even, not exactly easy mode. We had 18,000 rows in the pivot table. By the way, never do that. A pivot table with 18,000 rows in it is useless. Okay? You need a pivot table to summarize your pivot table at that point. But when you're trying to just show off, this is fine. Okay? So there's 36,000 calculations in here, 2 columns, 18,000 rows, 36,000 distinct calculations that need to happen against 300 million rows of data. Right? And I can slice and dice over here, and it's done in, I don't know, is that about a second and a half, maybe a little less? Right? You're virtually unlimited now. Right? Now, we made a huge mistake when we first built Power Pivot. We went out to the world and said, look, check it out, visceral demo, 300 million rows, right? Like in the monster truck voice. And everyone went, well, I don't have 300 million rows of data, so this isn't for me. Huge mistake on our part. Everyone started thinking that the power in Power Pivot meant 300 million rows of data. No. I use Power Pivot to analyze one table of data with 50 rows. It's just better. Okay? It's just flat out better than using sort of traditional Excel. At any data volume, any number of tables, better. And it's not just because I've become some sort of like Power Pivot patriot. Better. Let that wash over you. Okay? So this is not, I don't think this data capacity thing is like the most important thing that Power Pivot brings to us. It's just the removal of a limitation. It's all the other stuff that's really cool, but you can use it at any scale. Right? Any scale at all. Right? Anyone think I was faking that? Come on. You know what? 800 megabyte workbook. But it was originally like 65 gigabytes of database data. 65 gigabytes. I don't know. You guys said that in the Back to the Future Doc Brown voice. 1.21 gigabytes. Okay. Hey, cube formulas. They figure prominently in the title of this session. We should probably show some of those. So here's another pivot, okay? It's really the same data, the same silly AdventureWorks data set. And this pivot table is nice and sliceable, so I can make different selections and look at different years and all that kind of stuff, okay? When your pivot table is a Power Pivot pivot table, you can go onto the pivot table ribbon on the Analyze tab, and you can click on the button that I describe as the button that you are least likely to click on and probably in all of Excel ever, right? Called OLAP tools. And I had a hand in naming it this, so I'm making fun of myself. But underneath OLAP tools is this awesome little command, convert to formulas. How many of you have used this? That is awesome, okay? I mean, like 4 years ago, there would have been no hands up. This is one of the most amazing things in Excel, and most people didn't know about it. Still a lot of hands that didn't go up. A lot of hands that have been writing DAX and haven't done this. Okay, so we are moving the needle today. I'm going to click Convert to Formulas, and guess what's going to happen? Hey, look, it converted to formulas. So what? That's really awesome, Rob. Well, it's still sliceable, okay? It's still data bound. So when I refresh the data overnight, these numbers are going to change. It's still interactive. The numbers respond to this. And if you have one particular metric that you really like and you want to use this like as some sort of like KPI, I'm just going to Control X that. I don't know, we'll just put it somewhere. I'm not a master of aesthetics, so don't follow what I'm doing too carefully in that regard. But like, hey, we'll make this font bigger, make it bold because this is a big deal. Maybe shade the cell, something, okay? And as we click, it still updates, okay? It's completely live, but it gives us the ability to have complete one-off cell-by-cell control over the layout of our visualizations. Okay? You ever wanted that? You ever wanted to be able to put like a column in the middle? Yeah? Okay. So this feature's been lurking in the product since 2007. It's just that it didn't really light up for humanity until we got Power Pivot, because it only works with Power Pivot pivot tables. Don't try it with a regular pivot table. But the punchline there is, who should be using regular pivot tables anymore? None of you, right? There's no reason to not be using Power Pivot pivot tables for all of your pivot table work. Question up front?
What's your trick for hiding the dimensions that it looks up to?
What's my trick for hiding the dimensions that it looks up to? Well, I mean, yeah, these formulas do get a little chewy sometimes. I usually end up writing them from scratch rather than converting. You can write them from scratch as well. So cube value, for instance, we'll grab out of that connection. Hey, what measure do you want? We want the, we'll just grab, I don't know, total sales. Yeah. So this just gives me the number. It'll refresh overnight every time the data changes, but it's not interactive. It's not listening to any of the slicers yet. Okay? But we can fix that. We go into the formula. Slicer calendar, I don't know which one of them it is. I think it's this one. Yeah. So now it's listening to the slicer. Okay? So that first, the sexiest visual of all of the entire conference, this one back here. This is all constructed using cube formulas. Now, you've seen things like this before in the wild, all right? Before Power Pivot, before cube formulas, and the way that they've been assembled in the past is, again, like manual labor on the, basically on the scale of like slaving in the salt mines for a year, okay? Like many, many pivot tables hidden behind the scenes with very complicated formulas reaching into those pivot tables to grab cells and bring them back and to produce this overall report, or tremendous amounts of array formulas or whatever. This is so much cleaner, folks. And again, dynamic. You can slice and dice. Okay. Yeah, question? Yes. So the question is, can you use references in your cube formulas? Absolutely you can. Okay. For instance, we're not going to go into great detail in this one, but here's an example of what you can do when you really get crazy and you decide to not do anything else with your life for a little while. You can make Excel hang. Months and months and months in a row without an Excel problem, and then you get on stage. This was a lot more embarrassing for me when I used to work on the team, but now I'm like, hey, I'm one of you, right? So you should just be feeling sympathy for me. I mean, it's probably because that workbook is just so sophisticated, right? Here we go. Let's try that again. So fake data, UFO sightings, okay, and abductions and all that kind of stuff. But hey, here you can invent your own calendar visualization using this stuff. This is really probably the hardest thing I've ever done in Excel. So I'm not encouraging to follow in my footsteps necessarily. I couldn't do this again today if I tried. But the point is, you can do anything with cube formulas, including something ridiculous like this. So really only limited by your imagination and what can be displayed in 2 dimensions, which is almost everything, until we get holograms, right? Okay. Great question. Yeah?
As an Excel developer, is it your preference for to make your job easier if you're hitting a tabular model, let's say, that already does some of that relationships, measures?
Okay, so the question is, as an Excel developer, does it make it easier on me if I'm connecting to a pre-existing tabular model, which is really just big Power Pivot in the sky running on another server? Really, no. I mean, we're the ones usually building that tabular model. I wouldn't want to use a tabular model as a source for Power Pivot. And that's sort of you're reinventing something that's already been built at that point. So if someone already has an existing model, either we're working on that to improve it and extend it, or we're going straight to the original data sources that powered that model. Okay. I've got a countdown timer that's going 29, 28, 27. It's amazing how fast the time goes. Just a quick, right? A formula, running total, year to date, or lifetime to date, or quarter to date, or fiscal year to date. Okay? Again, these things this formula couldn't be simpler. The running total for year-to-date sales, okay, is this. All right. That's all it is. And it's completely portable. So when you want to, someone comes to you and says, but I don't really care about any year before 2003. You're like, okay, cool. Right? That'll be 30 minutes. Right? That kind of thing, right? Write the formula once. It's a very smart formula, and then it just is ready for anything. Give me a different report, filter it differently, lay it out differently. The formula just keeps responding and keeps answering questions. Tremendous, tremendous game changer. And I knew that I wasn't going to get all the way to the 7th example. Okay? But check this out. I'll leave you with one last example. This is a real thing that I did for some family members of mine that run a chain of convenience stores. I did falsify the names of the stores, but other than that, the data is real. This shows us these formulas are returning text. This is a text value, okay, in the values area of a pivot table, okay? The best store for selling each product and the worst store for selling each product and how much each of those stores generate. And then also, if all of the stores performed as well as this one, how much extra margin would be added to the bottom line, okay? And again, totally sliceable. Oh, you want to include lottery games in this, in this analysis? I clicked enable, right? What's that? You don't want to click lottery? Good, good. Folks, I can't believe this. 2 hangs and 1. Unreal. How do you do that with a text result? Well, the first thing to realize is just that Power Pivot, DAX, measures absolutely can return text. You can write an if that says if greater than this, if less than that, return, within compliance or outside of compliance or, getting in the danger zone like Kenny Loggins, right? Do whatever you want. As long as every branch out of your formula returns the same data type, like it's got to always be text. You can't be text sometimes and number other times. You're good to go. Okay. Now, this formula in particular is a little bit trickier because we're actually not just like hard coding text values into the formula. We're actually trying to fetch something. But if you just go to powerpivotpro.com and search on text measures, you're going to find a number of hits that'll teach you about this stuff, okay? I don't think that the text measures is in our book. I don't think so. It might be in the Alchemy book, but not in our main Power Pivot and Power BI book. Yeah. Yeah. If I have a file that's hanging a lot, the first thing I ask myself is, am I running 32-bit Excel or 64-bit? Right? And are you running 32-bit? You don't know? You're probably running 32 if you don't know. You should always be running 64-bit, okay? Which I know is hard to get. It's hard to get 64-bit Office. IET doesn't want to give it to you. Other add-ins are going to stop working. Oftentimes our clients end up with a separate, computer just to run 64-bit Office and to run Power Pivot. But 64-bit is so much more stable and able. Like, there's no way I could run that 300 million row demo on 32-bit. But I have a model we built with a client recently that only has 50 rows of data in it, but very sophisticated calculations, and it's enough to tank 32-bit. 64-bit has no trouble. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So cube formulas can be somewhat dynamic layout and everything, but you've got to be really willing to put in some effort. In general, I recommend to people that the only time to use cube formulas is for things like scorecards where you know what the dimensions, the axes are going to be, and you're not going to be like getting, like a new product every day, because the report's not going to add that new product. But to get it to go dynamic, you start off using the cube set function, and then you're down the rabbit hole. Okay, it's absolutely possible. It's totally possible. You can do it, obviously, but I'm not going to sit here and go, yeah, it's a layup.
Not 30 minutes.
No, not 30 minutes. No, that was a couple of days. All right, I think we need to cut it out and move on. Thanks, guys.